Welcome back to Seven Figure Flipping Podcast. This is Dr. Sheri Fluellen. I am getting to lead today's podcast, and I'm here with our amazing CEO of Seven Figure Flipping, Adam Whitney.
What's up?
Today, we're going to talk about a topic that is a pain point for almost every flipper, and that is contractors. But I have an interesting story about a contractor that I just started working with about a week ago. And it was just, I didn't even know what to do in the moment when he was saying these things and these things were happening. I thought this was like a normal contractor relationship that I've had with, I think I've had about 5 other contractors I've worked with over the years. And I just didn't know what to do with it. And I literally had to bring this conversation that I had with a contractor, or that he had with me, to our smaller group that I get to have an accountability with in Seven Figure Flipping, the community, and process it. And okay, so maybe that's like a very coachy, girly, like, I had to process my conversation. Do you ever say that, Adam? Do you ever say, hold on, I need to process this?
This might be a flaw that I have, Dr. Fluellen, but no, I don't feel like I ever say I need to process feelings, but it's also probably because I don't process feelings.
Okay. Now, to be clear, I don't know that I had to process my feelings. I just had to process all of my thoughts around it, and like, what did it really mean? And how did I actually want to respond? Because in any situation, we have this like knee-jerk reaction of how we want to respond. And that's based on personality. It's based on history, all of that stuff. But we don't have to respond that way. We can take a pause, be a little bit more thoughtful and intentional, and like respond differently. And that's the space I was in, is like, what is this about? What does this mean? And how do I want to respond? So I want to dive into this today. I think it's highly relevant for other women who are in the real estate investing space, because ultimately, I really believe this was about my gender. However, I think this is also highly relevant for all of our male listeners, because it doesn't mean that they won't come up with an experience similar, or maybe they can be aware of how they treat their wives or other women in the investor space, and not fall into potentially the same trap is a little strong, but just be a little bit more aware and thoughtful. So what do you think, Adam? Should we dive in?
Yeah, I would love to dive into this particular thing, especially around contractors. We're talking about contractors today, and if you're flipping houses, like, there's all kinds of pain points that come around contractors if you don't have the right things in place and the right people in place. But this is unique.
Yeah.
This is unique. This is something I may not experience, but certainly you did. So I can't wait to talk about it.
Perfect. So let me set the stage. I started flipping in Missouri, and this is our first deal. We purchased the property. We were about a week in to the renovations, or really it was just about the trash out and the demo. That's where we were at. So through the process of starting to do investing in a new state where I don't live, doing distance flipping, I had already done some Zoom interviews with different contractors. I had put a message out on Facebook Marketplace, had talked to a few investors and said, hey, who's good? Who should I interview? So I had about 3 different interviews that I had already done with contractors to vet them, to try to figure out which one do I want to go with on this first one. And so I did that and ended up with this gentleman who I really enjoyed having a conversation with him over Zoom. And he's a general contractor. He's been building his construction business. He's been doing roofing for quite a few years and has been expanding that. He seemed very open, or, my perception of him is he's very open. He's talkative. He's kind of got a fun personality, actually a lot like my husband. So I was like, oh, I totally got this. Like, I know how to interact with this kind of guy. And so we hired him, we bought the flip, closed on it. A month later, after the post occupancy, we took over the property. he coordinated getting the keys. He had his guys lined up and he was doing the demo. And this all happened prior to me physically meeting him for the first time and prior to me seeing the property for the first time. So we're about 5 days into the property, and I drove there with a couple of my kids. I drove there and got to see the property for the first time. So we arranged a meeting at the property in the morning. I get there and, he introduces himself. We shake hands, do a little small talk. And then he lets me know that he told his crew to go on lunch break because he didn't want me to have to meet them. And he didn't say it in a way of like trying to cover up anything, but he was explaining like they're very crass. Like they'll say stuff and do stuff that are just off color. And he's like, you don't need to have to deal with that. So they're at lunch, so we can just walk through and not have to deal with them. So that was a little bit odd to me because I've been in plenty of work sites with people speaking Spanish that I don't understand or, doing their normal contractor thing. And as we started walking through the place, he starts apologizing a little bit for how it looks. It's been demoed, like all the stuff's been ripped out. In the kitchen, there was a wall that was ripped out and there's like a hole in the floor that you can see to the basement. And as we're walking through, he told me that the smell of this house was way worse a couple days ago, and that he instructed his guys to spray air freshener around the house this morning before I got there because Adam, you're laughing. And so like, I didn't know what to do with that in the moment. I'm like, I have all these thoughts running through. I'm like, why were you spraying air freshener? Like, that's not normal. Like a flip house smells like that's just the way it is. And so as we continue to walk through the house and we're going over and kind of reiterating what the reno plan is, making some adjustments based on what we're seeing, all of that is fine. Like our ability to banter back and forth and to come to agreements about what we think should happen, all of that stuff is fine. But he keeps on making these little like comments and that I didn't know what to do with. And so there was just this like little thing in the back of my mind of like, what is going on here? Like I've walked into like crazy messes where, I didn't go into the room, granted, because I had sandals on. Like, I didn't wear the right outfit, but I didn't know what to do with it. So I set it aside. We actually went to lunch with him, my two kids, two of my teenagers who are with. We went to lunch with him. We bantered. We talked about his family. He's got some kids. And so it was all great. But there's just these like weird things that he had said and did that I just had never experienced with a contractor before. So after the fact, as I kind of was sitting back and reflecting, part of me was really irritated with him. And so I kind of had to figure out like, what is this irritation about? And a lot of it for me is about, I would like some respect in my field. Like I don't think I'm a person of strong ego. I don't demand respect from people, but I'm coming into this with experience and I can hang in the conversation. I know how to move the house forward. I see the vision. I'm able to communicate the vision. I'm able to rally people around. So I've got the skills. And part of me was like, does he not respect me? Like that this is what I'm doing full time? Like why is he shielding me from part of the journey of flipping? The more I thought about it, a different perspective emerged. And that is that maybe it's not that he doesn't respect me, but maybe it's he actually respects me so much that in his mind, he's trying to shield me from and protect me from the nastiness of the journey, because he thinks that maybe that's beneath me. And he also said a few things in our conversations I'm Dr. Sheri Fluellen. I have a doctorate in psychology. He went to undergrad and got a psychology degree. And so he said multiple times how much he will make a joke about him having ADHD or whatever. And then he'll make the comment that, of course, I understand this much more than even he does. So I know that he had a lot of respect for me in, kind of in my background. And so, so as I was thinking about it, I'm like, well, maybe he has so much respect for me that he's like, he feels like there's this need to protect me somehow. But I really, again, I go back to like, I really am very resistant to being put on a pedestal that somehow I can't handle or that I shouldn't have to handle or whatever. I don't like that feeling because my belief in myself is that I can do anything. If I truly want to do it, I will figure it out and I will make it work. And the idea that there's certain things that I shouldn't or can't do or won't do just doesn't sit right with me. And so I took a step back and I'm like, well, how do I think he would have approached the situation if my husband was the one that came with? Because my husband wasn't on this trip. He stayed home with the other two kids, doing work and keeping the fort down at home. And I'm like, there's no way. I just kind of laughed at the idea of my husband walking into the house and this contractor being like, I sprayed Febreze for you. Like, I just don't think that would have happened. So I bring this up because I think there's a couple aspects to this story, this scenario that are important. One, just generally speaking, in any situation with any person, no matter who you are, is there's always going to be situations where something happens unexpected and you have this like internal reaction that doesn't feel good. And sometimes that's the strongest, most clear language we can put to it in the moment is this doesn't feel good, or this doesn't feel right, or this, I don't like this. Trust that. Trust, but examine like what's going on? What got triggered in you? Is it, it could be a million different things. And then secondly is once you've kind of examined what's going on, like, how do you want to deal with it? Because as I was thinking about this, I could confront him. I could be like, hey, dude, I don't need you to protect me. You're not my husband. I don't need this from you. But I also recognized there could be a huge advantage to him feeling the need or feeling this compulsion to show me respect. And I think that could be advantageous, it potentially kind of in future dealings with him. So, and there's a lot of nuance in the middle. So I'm going to take a pause here in these thoughts. And I'm going to pass the ball to Adam about kind of his thoughts about the experience and how this is applicable to all of us in investing.
Oh man. What's interesting is I think we all have a unique dynamic. Like it could be gender, it could be age, it could be education level. There's like obviously the gender thing in play here. It's like I sprayed Febreze for you. It's like what? Typical like dumb, Neanderthal male thing to do. It's like, what do? We make it smell good. Which is just like when you think about it, it's like dumb. Obviously, he was, I don't know, was he trying to be like thoughtful or respectful of you? But
I mean, I genuinely think, and now this is my optimistic perspective coming out because I always tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. Missouri is much more southern than where I currently am. There's much more of the old school dynamics between male and female. And I genuinely think he was just trying to show, respect, or that's probably not the right word, but just trying to be the best gentleman he could be. And I think that was just how it came out.
I think the other layer here is like, you're Dr. Sheri. You're not just Sheri Fluellen, you're Dr. Sheri Fluellen. So then that then creates another part of the dynamic. Do you think that part of the dynamic influenced the situation at all?
I do.
What was the impact there?
I do. I think he really wants to maintain a long-term relationship with my husband and I as contractor, because he knows, I think I've told him that we're building there. And so he has the expectation that we're going to be doing a lot more. And I think he really wants to, he's got strong internal motivation to make this relationship work. He did say a couple things, which again, I react to, but this is my own stuff. Like, so then in the same trip, I had him go to the house that we're buying personally to live in. We're buying this house and we're going to do some updates, renovations to it to make it best for my family and I. And it's a lot of things. There's probably, I'm guessing, $150,000 worth of renovations we're going to be doing to this house. And the house is really nice already. And so I think he thinks we're bougie. And he's made a couple comments about us kind of being bougie. And I so do not identify with being bougie. And for anybody that doesn't, that's like the current teenage word for like being upper scale. In case, people are listening to this and they're like, I have no idea what bougie means. And so, but that's not how I identify myself. And so I think that's colored his perspective of us as well, that we're like these yacht owning, country club people. And that's just not like the typical lifestyle that we live. So I think there's a layer of that on it too, which goes along with the title of doctor.
Yeah, and like the part of the world you're in, like you're different there. It's like, oh, you're not in the kitchen cooking. I mean, you may actually cook in the kitchen. I don't know, but like you're a business leader, which in the Southern culture, it's like it's not as I would say it's not as not that it's not accepted, but it's not as common, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, look at this powerhouse lady who's crushing. And then it's also like how people are raised in certain areas, like in certain places. If somebody were to, if I have a construction person come to my personal house and they come to me to ask me questions, I would just direct them to my wife. I'm like, I don't know what she wants or what we're doing in here. You got to talk to Jenny. But they would come to me first because they assume like I'm the man of the house, which is true, but also that's not my expertise. That's Jenny's expertise. Design, what she wants for construction. And so I don't know. Do you read into that at all, or do you say that's a cultural norm, or is that a bad cultural norm that needs to be broken? How do you feel about that?
I'm a bit old school in my thoughts. And what I mean by that is I believe that there is two ends of the spectrum. There's the traditional male and the traditional female. And there's, as far as the types of roles that we do in life, I'm just naturally the nurturer. My kids will come to me when they want to talk about something vulnerable, or they want a cheerleader, or they want support. They know not to go to my husband because he does not respond in the way that they emotionally need at the moment. That's just how we were wired. And so I think part of it is just embracing this is life. This is biology. And I don't ever want to be a type of person that gets offended at cultural norms or biology. And I get the cultural norm, a little bit more of the South. And it's having an awareness that this is the way it is. Doesn't mean it has to be that way all the time. But for me to get offended, angry, outraged, irritated, whatever at this contractor would be entirely unhelpful. And I don't think honors and respects the position he's coming from. And so I think just being aware of it, and then I get to decide, what do I want to do with it? Do I want to gently correct him, which is an option? I could say next time I meet with him, if he continues kind of the same, kind of some of the same comments where, it's like, can I handle grime and, dirt and stuff? I could say, I don't mind walking through a really dirty house. I don't mind this stuff. Like, this is part of the journey, and this is what I do. So, let's do this together, and do it in a gentle correction. Or I could just not say anything and just kind of keep it in the back of my mind. And if it becomes an issue, then I can bring it up. But I don't want to unnecessarily cause conflict that may not matter. Now, that's part of my personality. Like, I'm a little bit conflict avoidant, and if left to my own devices, I would never say anything. But when thinking about healthy relationship, sometimes we have to introduce conflict because it's there, and if we don't, then it just kind of worsens. So I don't even know if I answered your question directly, Adam, but which is a really good question.
I mean, I think you did, and here's what I would ask you. You and I go deep on this topic quite a bit, right? We talk about there is a difference between a man and a woman.
Thank you, Adam.
That's fact. But even just in all the perceptions and there's all kinds of, there's complex layers. Some might argue that, if we go back to the 1950s, there was a certain way things were, and they have developed over time, where we now have these dual working 50-50 style relationships and households. And there's a large section of the female population who is like kind of came into what was previously the man side and is growing and becoming CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and all this amazing stuff. And they feel, and there are plenty of articles and a lot of study that kind of supports this stuff, like, hey, we've got to do more for the female side. This opportunity needs to be more readily available. There are biases that still exist from the way it was, which there's truth to everything. There's some truth to everything. So with that said, do you feel like as a leader in this industry, you have a obligation to come out of your non-confrontational shell and attack some of these things head on? Right? Like there's probably situations where you need to be direct with some of these people to not just achieve the thing you're achieving, because you're so savvy, you're so good with your words, you're so thoughtful in how you speak. Like you can achieve the result you're looking for while everybody's still happy at the end of it. That's just like a skill you have, right? But there are cases where you might be better served. You might feel like you have an obligation. Like, I got to like put this guy in his place. Do you feel that way?
There have been a couple scenarios in my life that I can think back on where I had to seek counsel. I had to, at the time it was our pastor. And I was like, here's the scenario. Somebody has done me wrong, and I'm having a reaction to it. Like, my human reaction is to strike back. But is that the proper thing for me to do, given my position and given my leadership and authority and business ownership kind of position, all of these different things? Because there's a lot of factors. And there have been times where the end result was, Sheri, you have an obligation in your role as leader to do something. And it's not me being vindictive, because I never want to be in that position. And so for me, it's being very clear that I'm acting out of duty and obligation. And I use those words with reverence. I don't use them in a negative sense. And so am I acting out of duty and obligation, or am I acting out of my own emotional reaction? And I have a very strong value of not acting out of my negative emotional reaction. And so I do think there are times where it is my duty and obligation to speak up and to correct somebody and to make them aware of the position they're coming from. Now, I can't control what they do with that information, if that changes them or if they continue on the way they have been. This situation, I don't know that at this point, I don't necessarily feel the duty and obligation, but I can't say that it couldn't get to that point. I think all of my other interactions with him are great. And so, yeah, it will be a theme, a pattern that I will definitely be tuned into with this gentleman to see if it ends up kind of getting to a point where it gets in the way of our ability to work fast. Like the time and energy it took to bring air freshener to a contractor, because I don't know about you, but I don't know any contractors that keeps them in the back of their truck. So the time and energy it took for them to take care of that before I got there, that's a bit of a time waste. And that, of all things, like, is he going to add extra work to their workload that's unnecessary? So for me, that's the biggest question, because I don't want that to slow us down. And so I will be paying attention to some of those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's like hurting your business. Okay, cool. So with all that said and all the, like, this whole experience, like, what's your biggest lesson personally from this? And what are maybe one or two tools people can use to be effective in situations like this?
Yeah. My biggest lesson is the reminder that people see us differently than we see ourselves. And it's always going to be that way. And sometimes people see us differently where they see our potential and see us as more than what we internally feel about ourselves. Sometimes it's reverse. Sometimes people don't acknowledge or give us credit or see us as confident and as skilled and able as we see ourselves. And I think just the awareness that there's often going to be this mismatch between our internal identity and the identity that other people are interpreting, and just being aware of how do we want to deal with that. That's just part of life. And how do we want to deal with that? And really being clear, for me, really being clear on who is it that I want to be and who is it that I identify as in business, in real estate, and living out of that identity, that internal identity, not the identity that people might put on me or assume about me that doesn't fit me.
Always so deep, always so thoughtful.
You kind of get that when you spend 10 years in college for how to analyze people and yourself and understand behaviors.
In the military, 20 years in the military, not just the military, but the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps, I was an infantry guy, like on the ground doing the dirty work. Like, most problems can be solved with violence. I guess that's not a great strategy overall as a business leader, but it's like, gosh, when people are dumb, it's real hard to not want to go that direction. But yes, I mean, it's a thoughtful. My biggest takeaway from this, and the thing that you are world class at, is you think before you speak. And I feel like as an entrepreneur, I'm always like on the move, and I want to get. I operate with such urgency. Thing comes in, I'm like very direct in my response, which sometimes lands not like, oh, he's mad at me, or like, gosh, that's kind of rude. But I'm just like going from thing to thing to thing to thing, and like, oh, problem comes up. It's like whack-a-mole, boom, solved, off my plate, because I'm trying to clear mental space. But the thing that I take away from you is having the mental agility to recognize situations in which you might just pull back a little bit and think critically about the factors of the situation and how to best respond to something, which I historically have not done super, super well, but I'm working on it. So thanks for sharing that. And that was a big takeaway for me.
Absolutely. And so to kind of wrap up my perspective, Adam, I think our listeners, they will totally identify either with my style of communication and interaction or your style or somewhere in between. I think the challenge for your style is having, and I think you do this well, Adam, but it's having the humility to go back and apologize. my
Oh, for
husband my
sure.
husband is this way, and he will walk all over our kids, or say things, do things without realizing how he's coming across. He has to do a lot of apologizing, and I think that that's to his credit, that he is able to go back to my kids and say, you know what, I said this, my tone was this, and I'm sorry. That's not my problem. Typically my problem is, or my challenge is, having the courage to say what I need to say when I realize that I need to say it. And so those are kind of two ends of the spectrum, and the challenges that we have just given our natural inclination.
Love it. Love it. What a great episode. Love it. It's so much fun. I feel like I'm in session. We're in session, and I'm getting better because of it.
I'm happy to hear that, Adam. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And if you could share this with a friend, if you got something from this, you thought this was cool, you love Dr. Sheri Fluellen, share it with a friend, leave us a review, or send us a message and tell us what topics you want to hear about. We love doing the podcast and providing value to the real estate industry. And we hope to see you next time. Till the next one.
Bye.